Hello everyone, Marcia Sivek here with BeProvided Conservation Radio. We are doing a rebroadcast today of one of my favorite interviews with John Muir Laws. I interviewed Jack at his home a couple of years ago, and I'm happy to say that he has won the Bay Nature Local Hero Award for Environmental Education. This is well deserved as he has inspired me in my love of nature and nature drawing. So please listen in so he can inspire you as well. Maybe inspire you to start a nature journal or get outside during this crazy coronavirus time. Journaling is easy, meditative, and definitely easy to do while you are social distancing yourself from others and getting back into nature. So enjoy the show, and congratulations, Jack. And I'm really happy that you have won this Local Hero Award. It is well deserved.
Welcome to BeProvided Conservation Radio, sharing stories and information about the environment, wildlife, and the people who are dedicating their lives to protect the world for future generations. These inspirational stories will take you from the Santa Cruz Mountains to remote areas of Africa. Here are your hosts.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the BeProvided Conservation Podcast. Today, our guest is an enthusiastic and passionate educator, artist, naturalist, father, husband, and his name is John Muir Laws. So during the show, I will also be referring to him as Jack, as to not to confuse you. So this is a great show for anyone interested in nature, if you're an educator or an artist or parent, or just someone who just wants to reconnect or get outside and ask questions and be connected with nature. So we had a great conversation at Jack's home where we discussed many things from geology, Star Wars spaceships, how he became involved with nature journaling, and how he approaches his time in the field to observe and absorb what nature is showing him. And we also asked him what gives him hope for the future of our planet for next generations. So if you haven't yet, please check out his website at johnmuirlaws.com. He's got a wealth of information and free videos and just a bunch of resources to get you out there and get you looking at nature and being part of nature. So enjoy the show today. Welcome to the show, Jack. Thank you for joining us today.
It's really fun to be here with you. Thanks for this chance to have a conversation.
And all of a sudden, your name kept popping up everywhere. And I was talking to the Bird School Project guys, and they mentioned how, program. Yeah, it is. And they were excited, because, journaling really is a core of their program as well. And you really have had an influence on them, I believe, as well. So I'm like, I have to interview this guy. And then I found you at one of your workshops in West Valley Community College, and really loved it. So anyways, I just wanted to find out, when I attended your workshop, I just saw how passionate you were, not only about art and nature, but about motivating people, whether it's to be creative or to get outside or to be more observant or something. And
yes, and yes, that's my end game.
Yeah.
My end game is to connect people with nature in such a way that they will be moved towards stewardship. And the way that I go about that is using art as the door, as the key.
Wonderful.
And not so much art where you're focused on creating a work of beauty, but using the art to rediscover the beauty that's in nature. So using the art as a tool to help people learn to focus their attention, to focus their observations, their curiosity and their wonder. You focus it through the lens of art. And it doesn't matter really if you end up with a picture that's pretty or not.
Right.
The process of doing that really helps you pay attention and observe, and I find connects people with the natural world in a profound, moving, and authentic way.
Yeah, I can see that. And one of your things that you mentioned too during the workshop, and you did mention, I don't expect people to walk out of here with beautiful pieces of art or something like that in those words, but you want people to ask questions, to go outside like that. Now, what kind of questions should they be asking?
Well, it's what I sort of have a basic, when I go outside, a basic mantra that is, I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of. So, and the I notice is deliberately raising your level of attention to the details that they're not essential for your survival, but if you don't deliberately focus on them, your brain's really not going to pick them up, because your brain's being very practical. It's saying, look, this isn't essential for my survival. I don't need to see the trim on the tertials of this bird in order to help me collect enough food to get through the day. Mm-hmm. So your brain wants to very efficiently kind of go on to the next thing. But through the process of what I call I notice, it's deliberately getting yourself to slow down and initially pay more attention. And you can do that two very powerful ways. One is journaling and drawing and writing your observations. When you do that, you have to take each discrete thing that you see and intentionally transfer it to paper, so that getting it out of your head and onto the paper is a very powerful way to really help yourself observe much more. Mm-hmm. You can also do that if you don't have a journal with you, by just saying out loud whatever it is that you're seeing. So when I'm outdoors and a crow pops up next to me, I start talking to the crow, telling the crow all the things that I notice and see about it. My goal is actually to get myself to notice things about the crow that I've never noticed about it before. And what the really interesting thing is that this works really well.
Yeah.
That with a crow that I've seen a gazillion times, the gazillion and second time, you're still finding fresh new stuff in the crow. Yeah, that deliberate attention. Yeah. So phase one is I notice. Phase two, as you were mentioning, mm-hmm. these questions. I try to get myself to be intentionally curious about everything that I see. And so I will say my questions out loud. I'm constantly looking. I'm on the hunt for things that I don't really understand, things that I don't know, things that I've never seen before, mm-hmm. things that are unfamiliar, unexpected. And these don't come as like big shocks. They're actually just this very subtle feeling of like, oh, that's funny. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us are kind of trained to, when we get those feelings of, oh, that's weird, I didn't expect that. It's a threat to us, because we kind of pride ourselves by how much we know, and our sort of mastery of the world is that, my model of the world fits the world very well. And what we tend to do is to avoid the things that just feel off or a little bit wrong. But for me, when something feels kind of weird, mm-hmm. a little bit funny, that's where I lean in. That's where I go, oh, goody, there's something here in reality that is different than the way that I expect it to be. And then what I can do on the other side of that is if I say that out loud, like, oh, that's weird, I didn't expect that. Look at that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to remember that little mystery. And that's my place to learn something new about the way that this world really is. Yeah. So that gives you two parts of it. I notice, I wonder, and the third is it reminds me of. Mm-hmm. And what I will also do when that crow's bopping around on the in front of me is anything that sort of strikes my fancy that my brain, one way or another, connects with this experience. And that can be as scientific or as playful and funny as I am feeling at the moment. Yeah. But anything that my brain intentionally kind of goes like, that reminds me of, I will also say those out loud or write them into my journal to get myself to bookmark those little micro connections between things. Yeah. The most interesting kind of functional definition of creativity that I've come across is creativity is the ability to make functional connections between seemingly unrelated things. Yeah. And so I'm constantly trying to train myself to do that. And can I find the thread between this and that other thing over there? And that's a process that I do whether or not I'm journaling, but all the time when I'm outdoors. I've taught this to my kids. When we go driving around in the car, we play, I wonder games.
Oh, and that's good. So this is a trained thing. So
yes.
So
all of this.
All
of it is training. So your curiosity about the world, your ability to observe, and your creativity or ability to make connections, those are all skills that you can train and you can get better at. Mm-hmm. And it's not that you have this gift of being a great observer. It's that you have trained yourself to attend to the things that for a lot of people are irrelevant. You have lowered the threshold of the point at which your brain goes, ooh, look at that.
Well, like with the crow, people are like, oh, that's just black and it's big. But when you really look at it, it's purple, it's blue, it's got different movements in the light. And,
Yes.
So, once you start paying attention to those details, it makes a difference.
I was just before we met recently, I was out standing in front of my house looking at all things a crow. And the and exactly what you're saying, the color on its upper tail coverts, the iridescence on that was reflecting a different color than on the wings.
Yeah.
And I'd never noticed that before. And I thought that was just it just sort of made me think of wouldn't it be fun to sort of map. Of course, iridescence changes with the viewer's angle to the sun. But wouldn't it be interesting to make sort of a general map of what regions iridesce different colors?
As the light hits.
From backlit, full sun, side view. Wanted me next. So the next time what happens when I get one of these kind of like, ooh, wouldn't that be fun?
You have to go find a crow.
It bookmarks itself in my head.
Yeah.
The next time I'm hiking around and I look down and there's a dead crow, I know what I'm going to be doing is propping it up on the ground and then slowly circumnavigating the dead crow, slowly walking around it in a circle, making drawings and diagrams of the color distribution from backlight, from full sun, from the side, from all these different positions. And there's no way that I would have been inspired to do that with the next dead crow I find. Now I'm looking forward to my next dead crow.
Yeah.
And
which is ironic to say, yeah.
If there's going to be a dead crow out there, I hope that I'm the one who finds it. And not that I've got anything, not that I'm wanting crows to die so that I can do this, but when there's a dead crow, I want to be there.
And to map it. That's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, and I like that in your nature drawing and journaling book, that reminds me of is very playful. I like that. You have some flowers, like some of the petals I think you have remind me of Star Wars spaceships. There's
yes.
And I love that because it brings it back
pod.
to you. Yeah.
So whatever little geeky thread, your brain takes, if you're looking at part of a fruit and you say, like that reminds me of, blood vessels in the brain, or, that's, then you're like, ooh, that's like a really cool observation. But, if it reminds you of Jabba the Hutt,
then write it down.
Then this reminds me of Jabba the Hutt. Yeah. That little, the seed pod on a calochordus that I was looking at, it had these three big wings, and it reminded me of that little 3-winged shuttle that, Han and Leia and our heroes, take this is kind of fun. You kind of know who your tribe is. I was down in Santa Cruz doing a presentation, and I had on a slide, I was talking to people about this process of it reminds me of, and I put that slide up, and there were all these college students sitting there in front of me, and we're talking about, I said, this reminded me of that shuttle from Star Wars. And I looked out in the audience and like everybody was nodding. And there was one person who goes, oh yeah, Delta class. I just thought, okay, you're my tribe.
Yay,
you're gonna like, I will see your Star Wars trivia and raise you. I thought that was great. So now I know that's the Delta class. So, and now when I see that seed pod, it reminds me of not just of that, but it kind of connects me back with that person who knew that was the Delta class shuttle. So everything in the landscape then it's about relationships.
Yeah.
And there are these webs. And the more that I'm intentionally doing that, I'm walking through these wonderful networks of sort of rekindling neurons that haven't gotten to play since the last time that I thought with this. But then when you do engage with something, there's all this other stuff that's already at the table.
Yeah.
And ready to come out and play with you.
I like that. So you're teaching your children this, you mentioned, and training them with the I Wonder game and such. And so when did this hit with you as a child? How young were you when you started? Were you always, as soon as you could pick up a pen and piece of paper, out drawing things? How did that happen?
My path to keeping a nature notebook it's an interesting one. Both my parents were naturalists. My mom was more of a botanist, and my dad was more of a bird watcher. So between the two of them, I just sort of grew up kind of looking up and down and all around. And we went out on a field trip with a wonderful botanist friend of ours. And she brought a number of her, she sort of had this cohort of people, Gladys Smith. She would have this crew of people who would go around with her, and we would explore Table Mountain and other sites. There was a woman named Neela Watley who showed up one day with a sketchbook and journal and pens and sat out in the fields drawing every flower that she saw. And my mom noticed that the whole time that I was out there on that field trip, I was walking around next to her, and she would sit down and start drawing, and I'd sit down on the grass next to her and just watch what she did. She'd pick up and move and go to the next one. I'd pick up and move and follow her around, and I was like her shadow.
Your little shadow, yeah.
Right.
How old were you? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
And the next time we went out in the field, my mom said, "Hey, I've got something for you." And she opened up this little bag, and there was exactly the same kind of journal, exactly the same sorts of pens that Neela had used. Yeah. And she had noticed that, and that got me started nature journaling.
Wow. So yeah, you did start young then.
Yeah. And of course, as a little kid, a lot of my journal pages then also were like, astronauts and spacemen. And
yeah.
all these sorts of things. But over the time, it became more and more and more just nature stuff, because that's what when I go into nature, I find just a different level of peace and calm. Mm-hmm. I get into a flow state of wonder and curiosity and investigation. And it's just intoxicating for me.
Are you one that can find nature anywhere? Like
the crow was in front of my house in San Mateo.
Yeah, exactly. With traffic going by, but you can still focus in. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I'm driving along, and maybe it makes me kind of a hazard on the road, but I'm seeing white-throated swifts flying up into light holes underneath freeway overpasses, and you're like, oh my gosh, look, I never knew where the white-throated swifts went. Yeah. And then I have to go find a place that I can pull over and park and go back and watch, and it's a slippery slope, and once you start into that world, you find nature is everywhere. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I try to tell people too, and the goal of hopefully talking to you is to show that nature can be anywhere. And journaling it can be about any environment and being observant, I think, as well, and wherever they live. So, well, that's cool. So what inspired you to be so passionate about education?
In high school, I was going to an alternative high school that had a program where once a month, not once a month, but for one full month during the school year, all school would end, and students could follow a project that they were really interested in. So one year I worked in a veterinary clinic, and I'd always thought that I wanted to be a vet, but after doing lots of doggy shampoos, I decided it wasn't the experience that I was looking for, how to connect with animals. Yeah. On another one, I worked with a naturalist named John Kelly out at the Point Reyes Bird Observatory, and he was training people to be educators, to lead as sort of docents for groups who would come and visit the Point Reyes Bird Observatory. Mm-hmm. So I went through their training and then led a couple of groups and found my calling and was absolutely hooked. So then became a nature counselor at my Boy Scout camp, and then the director of the nature department at the Boy Scout camp. And then in college, I worked as a student aide in a regional park doing interpretive programs. And just one thing after another, I kept finding myself doing things in education. I kind of had this fantasy that at some point I would kind of go off and be like the man in the woods doing research, sort of this Farley Mowat-esque dream. And then I discovered when I was doing my master's research that one of the things that really drove me was I loved coming back down into the city and being a teaching assistant again. I'm like, oh, goody, I get to teach again. Yeah, I was like, I really love teaching.
Yeah. And you can tell that during your workshops. You're very motivating and very engaging. And I can't see you just being out in the field without people there to teach.
I mean, Homo sapiens, as crazy as we are, they're my species. I love them. And I love trying to take an idea and wrap my head around it to the point that I can deconstruct it and reconstruct it in a way that will be really useful for people. I'm dyslexic, and so the standard way that information gets into a lot of people's heads, for me, often doesn't work. I try to sit down and read something, and it's just going to bounce off my brain.
Yeah.
And
Me too,
so
actually.
for me, I have to find all these sort of alternate ways to learn. And I think that a lot of that then rolls over into my teaching. So when I'm teaching, I'm applying this dyslexic approach to education, which I think ends up working for lots of people.
I think more people learn with a hands-on or seeing visual approach than just, hey, read this lecture, and we'll talk about it later, kind of thing. Yeah.
And also it makes me, for me, usually if there's like a way that you're supposed to do something, when I try to do that, most often it's not going to work. And so from out of the gate, I'm assuming that there are 20 different ways to go about any problem.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at, what are the 20 different ways to explain, how do you draw a bird beak? And how do you think about that? And how am I doing that? And if I can articulate that, if I can crystallize that, it actually makes it easier for me to draw. But I'm often coming up with a number of different ways to approach the same thing. And if one of those doesn't work for somebody, then I've got a bag of tricks of others. And then I'm reading the room and looking at the audience and seeing which ones are registering with people. And if something seems to be a dead end, I'm going with a different one.
So yeah. So you're very flexible, I guess, when you get up there and start teaching. Yeah. So how do you, because you're probably teaching mostly non-scientific people, I would assume, in some of these.
Well, it's a mix.
Or is it?
So,
Yeah.
some people are naturalists who want to learn to draw. Other people are artists who want to learn the science and the natural history.
Yeah.
People kind of coming to nature journaling in the Bay Area, it's a mixed bag of really interesting people.
Yeah.
But everybody's got, something to bring to the table. And so whether your entrance into it is through art or through curiosity about science or through a love of birds, there's a way in. And so then that gets you, if you're using the drawing and the journaling as a tool to, say, record your observations about birds because you love birds, you end up then making lots and lots and lots of pictures of birds. And anything that you do a lot of, you get better and better at it. So we have a really powerful myth that drawing is this gift. There are these sort of gifts or talents that people magically have.
Right.
And it really is just that, the person who draws the most birds gets the best at drawing birds.
Yeah.
And so if you
keep
can trick that person
drawing,
to, all right, you love birds, let's draw a lot of them.
Yeah.
And then they start drawing a lot of them and they turn around and now all of a sudden, not only are they seeing more about birds, but they're also now getting positive reinforcement from the bird sketches that they're doing. And they're going like, that actually looks like that.
Right.
So if somebody says that but people constantly come in and say, I've wanted to do this forever, but I can't draw a straight line.
Yeah.
And they always tell you the stick figure story.
Yeah.
Like, I just draw stick people, right? And so everybody comes in and I hear again and again, stick people can't draw a straight line. So my goal then is to try to trick that person into just sticking with it for 1 year.
Okay.
And if they stick with it for 1 year, at the end of that, their friends are coming up to them and saying, oh gosh, you're so lucky to have this gift. But I wasn't born an artist like you. You rewire your brain through what you do again and again and again. And it's that your brain is a really lazy piece of electric meat. And if it doesn't have to wire up new synapses, it's not going to.
Yeah.
But the way you tell it to isn't by wanting to draw. It's by just drawing and then drawing again and then drawing again and drawing again.
And not be afraid of what comes out at the end. Just keep doing it.
Right.
If that's what you're passionate.
So if your goal is to make pretty pictures
Yeah.
and you get something and it's not a pretty picture, you go, I hate this. I don't like to draw. But if your goal is to notice something about that bird that you've never noticed before or remember it more vividly, and you make your little sketch and it's not a pretty picture and that's okay with you, you're going to make another sketch after that. And you're going to make another sketch after that. And you're going to make another sketch after that. And all of a sudden, it's looking like the bird. So at the start, it's really important for people to really intentionally move the goalpost of why they're doing this.
Yeah.
So to draw birds without needing to make pretty pictures of birds. But just to have faith, that will come. It will be pulled along by all the observations and all the energy that you put into sketching birds.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
And so you can do this. And the same thing is true of anything we pick up and set our hand to. For the longest time, I thought that I am, I wish I was musical, but I can't really play.
Yeah, I say that a lot.
But it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because I'm not doing music.
Right. Yeah.
So my little daughter, 6 years old, hears Grace Vanderwall on the radio and wants to learn how to play the ukulele. And so to help motivate her, I get a ukulele and we sit there and we'll do ukulele together.
Oh, great.
And so now all of a sudden I'm realizing I'm starting to be able to play the ukulele. And it really is this thing that, and had it been a guitar, it would be the guitar. Had it been a recorder, it would have been the recorder. But whatever it is that you do, not that what you want to do, but you actually do, your brain rewires itself and builds structures in it to allow you to do that at all points in your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. You have to work at it. And I get that with drawing and, eating healthy. People are like, oh, you're just healthy or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, I work really hard at it.
Yeah.
It's different. So,
and at a certain point, it becomes your habit.
Right.
And becomes the default.
Right.
And it's just muscle memory going on in the background. And those things start to take care of themselves. But at the start, it is effort. It's work to make those habits.
Yeah.
And people also think that you need some kind of Malcolm Gladwellian 10,000 hours of work in order, I'd like to be able to draw, but I don't want to put in 10,000 hours right now because I'm whatever age I am at this point. And you don't have to put in 10,000 hours. The 10,000 hour thing is about becoming the lead violinist in the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. Right? That person, they put in 10,000 hours. To get to the point where you're getting positive reinforcement from it and it's enriching your life and you're like, wow, that looks like that bird.
And if it makes you happy.
And it makes you happy.
Yeah.
You getting little dopamine squirts when your pencil hits the paper.
Exactly.
Then, that's, you can get that in 1 year.
Yeah.
You just start doing it, and your brain goes oh, we're drawing now? You're drawing again? Okay, let's build some neurons there. Boop, boop,
create it creates a regimen or your habit in your life. So speaking of, with you seem like you're a very busy person. You have your hands in many projects, I think, with the workshops and teaching and your books and all that. Do you draw every day? Do you try to draw every day?
Right now,
or journal at least.
I am. There are times when I do, and there are times when I don't, and times when I do, I see my happiness level go way up. I just sort of get in this. I was going to ask
that if you notice a difference.
Flow state, and I just and that just carries over into everything that I'm doing. Yeah. Right now, I am trying to finish up a project that I'm incredibly excited about, and it also gets all my creative juices flowing. I'm working on a book with another amazing naturalist, Emily Lagren.
Mm-hmm. Oh, she helped with this book, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah. So the woman is absolutely brilliant and has been just a game changer in my thinking about what we can do with nature journaling. So we're working on this book for teachers.
Oh, great.
And homeschool parents or educators, anybody who wants to work with kids to, how do you teach people to do this nature journaling? Mm-hmm. What are the best practices in that? And it's a mission now to get this out. I want to get this out. I want to essentially try to, as much as I can, make, me as a teacher of how do you do nature journaling. If I can make myself obsolete and unnecessary through making this book, then I've done the right thing.
Goal. Yeah.
And so then I want to get this out to to teachers and parents and educators and
it should be part
naturalists
of
in
every
museum.
curriculum. Yeah.
It should be.
Yeah.
And there are new science standards that many states have adopted called the Next Generation Science Standards.
Mm-hmm.
And they're brilliant.
Good.
They're really, really good. And this sort of approach, this nature journaling approach, you start nature journaling, and it's as if they let's rewrite the science framework to encourage teachers to do nature journaling.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to do next generation science standards, the kind of science and engineering practices that are involved in observation and asking questions and finding evidence and documenting what you see and thinking about what you're looking at and how do you investigate that, how do you really see. That's foundationally a part of the practice of nature journaling. So the nature journaling, it's not about like, I'm going to go out in the woods, I'm going to make a pretty picture of a flower. And sometimes that happens. Mm-hmm. But really the important thing is that you are going out and you are doing a deep dive into the world and seeing what you can learn and discover. And if you've got your window cracked open to let the mysteries in, mm-hmm. and all these like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect that. And look at that. I wonder why. How come this is over that, but that's over there? When I didn't see that on the other side of the mountain, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Why is this certain lizard over here and this one over here? Yeah.
Yeah. It used to be that all the sort of scientists and naturalists had this general idea that you could go about in the world and tinker with stuff and mess around with it and figure stuff out. Mm-hmm. And just go out and start doing that. And so everybody was doing that. Now, people sort of think that, like, you want science information? Well, there are these people called scientists. They go out and then they put that stuff and they take that and they put it in a book. So you ought to read the science book. That the idea that the science book, that's science, as opposed to the process that got that information in the book that all of us can do.
Right.
So the nature journaling is foundationally next generation science standards. And it also brings in these other essential thinking and visualization skills that are essential for building good scientists.
Yeah, I think it's general for building just good humans.
I agree.
Yeah. So that's great. So when this is a new project, or you've been working on this, is it ready to be out in the world yet, or when will it be out in the world?
It's not hatched yet.
Yeah.
But we are tantalizingly close, which makes it a very kind of confusing point to be in, because you want to just say, be free, go out and go. But it needs a little bit more care and feeding. When it's all ready, we're going to send it to Heyday Books, and it will be published as a bound book that people can get. But we're also going to take the entire document and make that available on the web as a free download for any teacher anywhere in the world who wants to use it. And we're going to try to find some collaborators to translate it into other languages and just make this tool available to everybody.
Oh, that's great. Have you tested it with any teaching collaborators, if I can say that right?
So
yeah, good. So they're pretty willing to.
We've done a lot of testing with school groups, informal education groups, and homeschool groups, and it's gold. It works.
Yeah, that's great. So that's a good success start anyways. I know the Bird School Project is using journaling, and I don't know if it's the same approach then as if you tested it through their stuff or not, but they're finding great success with journaling as well.
Yeah, it's amazing when you get people to journal. If it changes the way that they see, it changes the way they fundamentally observe. If there's a bird in front of a student and you say, I want you to look hard at that, now look even harder. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. What happens is your brain kind of goes, yep, it's a bird. It's not going to eat me, and I'm not going to be able to eat it. So what's that over there? And you tell people to look harder. People just end up staring at it because that's what they're supposed to do. And then they're thinking like, what am I supposed to be noticing? Mm-hmm. When you do this active, I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, or journaling, documenting, see it, have that observation, register in your head, get that down onto paper. In order to for something to go between your eye and your mouth, or your eye and your hand, it really has to go through your brain.
Yeah.
And that's that process of attention is going to improve your memory. It's going to improve your experience. It is a way of waking yourself up to being present and alive in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I think we talked about stewardship, and I think that does make people better stewards of their environment, and they're going to want to care for that beautiful bird they're trying to draw so diligently and take care of. And
well, as an environmental educator, my goal I kind of was for, and still is, I want to help people fall in love with the natural world.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? Do you do that by telling them about plastics in the ocean? Do you do that, which is important for people to know about?
Right. I think people need to learn the challenges, but yeah.
But how do you help people fall in love with the world? So I had to come up with a working definition of love. Mm-hmm. And so here's my working definition of love. I think that love is, and here I'm not talking about that kind of agape thing where you fall in love, which is more kind of a trick of our biochemistry to get us to pair bond long enough to continue the species.
Right.
What a romantic. No, but
the science version.
That's right. But love, think of sort of the love of a place, that love of a child, the love that grows through time. Love is the deliberate act of sustained, compassionate attention. Mm-hmm. And it is the act of attention. And the more that you can focus and attend to something, the more you connect with it, till that barrier between, sort of where the it becomes the thou, mm-hmm. where the boundaries between yourself and whatever it is you're looking at, they begin to dissolve. When you give that kind of attention to another person, it fundamentally changes your relationship mm-hmm. with that person. If you close your laptop and be present and put away your phone and you are 100% there, not thinking about the next thing you're going to do, but you're there sharing food with somebody and you are 100% there, it takes work and it's hard to do. Mm-hmm. But the more that you practice that, the more you're able to cultivate that when you kind of go out in nature or when you sit down with somebody.
Right.
It changes you, it changes the person you're relating with. That's why people fall in love with their therapists.
Yeah, because they're paying attention.
Yeah, nobody ever really listened to me.
Yeah.
But what if we could have that in all of our relationships? What if you pay that kind of attention to the natural world? You fall more deeply in love with the world. Mm-hmm. So I've seen just in the course of 20 minutes, I have students go out, we play this nature journaling game where they go out, they find a plant and they document it, describe it, draw it, record as much information about it in their journal as they can, and they come back and they get a partner and they bring their partner over to where they were drawing this plant. Mm-hmm. They say, all right, my plant is somewhere right in this area. Here are my notes. Take a look at these and see if you can pick out which one is mine. And their partner starts looking around. Well, if it's a little plant and their partner is about to accidentally step on it, there's no way that's going to happen. The kid will throw themselves in the way, like, wait, no, step back. Right?
You're right.
No, it's not just any plant now.
Yeah.
It's that one that I built a relationship with.
It's like my plant. Yeah.
It's my plant. I have a relationship with it. Or if you as a kid had a special place, a tree that you climbed all the time and you'd go there and sit, that tree is not just a tree. It is a tree that there's a relationship between you and that tree.
Yeah.
And somebody wants to cut down a tree. Somebody wants to cut down that tree. There's going to be trouble.
Yeah, there's going to be a fight. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
So then how do I get people to fall in love with nature? I teach people how to pay attention. Yeah.
Have you had a really difficult student that is just like, I can't draw, I'm going to just, sit here, and then by the end of your session, they're just like showing off their work and like, look at what I saw this magnificent thing. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
That epiphany that hits you. I'm sure you probably see that often, but
it actually happens more often than you would think.
Yeah.
And then, so the way that I find the most powerful way to get people to that point, where they have that epiphany. And it's once you have that epiphany, it's not like one of these Goodwill Hunting things where like, oh, now I understand everything and now all my problems are solved, right? It's still work,
Yeah.
right? You still have to keep at it. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do to maintain that habit? What are you going to do to really make that habit? You can have an epiphany in a class where like, oh, I can see how to do this. But if it's not your habit to do that on a regular basis, the next day you're going to get up in the morning and it's still not your habit to do that. Mm-hmm. So I want to help that person be able to maintain that, make that habit and maintain that habit. But they wouldn't be able to get there in the first place unless you just took all the pressure off the drawing, put the emphasis on it. Let's be present in the world. Let's see what you can notice. Let's see if you can come up with a question that you've never asked before. See if you can make a creative connection between things and see a thread connecting two things that you otherwise wouldn't see. And when you go at it with that approach, it's so much more fun.
Yeah.
And you've got permission to do it. Otherwise, art is something that, who does art? Well, artists do. Am I an artist? Well, no. But
I would say yes, but yeah.
Well, but a lot of people, we identify ourselves by our labels. Mm-hmm. And if people say I'm not an artist, what that then translates into is I'm not going to draw.
Yeah.
So I don't think about the artist label. So is it what I want to do is, I guess, are you going to do the noun or the verb? Mm-hmm. Right? Are you going to, I'm an artist or I'm not an artist. I don't care.
Right.
But let's draw.
Yeah. Yeah. Or do something creative. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of myself. Every morning I'd be like, I'm going to draw or paint for, at least 20 minutes every morning before I get going, just to get the creative juices going. But you put a little bit of pressure on yourself to do one specific thing. And I had to change it around because I found that I couldn't actually get my paints out every day or my pencils. So I would be like, well, at least I'm going to get outside and sit quietly in my sit spot, listen to the birds and see what I observe and just try to do something. So I kind of take the pressure off of that specific goal. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah.
Some people sort of have the approach of, go big or go home.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Just go.
So as long as I'm doing something
take the first step.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking, well, I'm not going to be able to devote an hour a day to drawing. Mm-hmm. So
I have to do something else.
I can't do this.
Yeah.
And then you beat yourself up, or right now.
Then you don't do anything.
So just a couple of weeks ago, I was drawing every day, and right now I haven't drawn for several days. And I could say oh, forget it, I feel terrible. You think about it, people go on a diet, and then they go out and they binge eat something, and they say, oh, forget it, I can't do this, and so they give up. They sabotage themselves. But the diet wasn't really a good idea in the first place because it wasn't sustainable.
You're right.
So rather than set yourself up for failure with something that you're not going to do, figure out what are your priorities and how do you then create a lifestyle that allows you to do that. Mm-hmm. And then what happens, and it will take work at the start, and a lot of people think I was starting to draw, but it really didn't feel natural. It kind of felt like work. Yes, because it was.
Yeah.
Right. And because when you're making a new habit, when it's not your routine and your habit, it takes work to get over that inertia of what you didn't do yesterday.
Right. Yeah.
So you get yourself out there and you do that. And then, after doing that for a few more days, it's becoming your habit. If you went out and took your walk or your run today, or yesterday, you get up this morning and you can't wait to put on your shorts and shoes and head out the door.
Right.
But you skipped it yesterday, maybe the day before that too.
Yeah.
All right. Today, maybe.
Well, I haven't gone all week.
Yeah, I haven't gone all week. So yeah. Yeah. We're just creatures of habit. And and recognizing that, for me, it's been really helpful. And just sort of realizing that, oh, look, I'm doing this thing that isn't really a productive thing to do. Mm-hmm. And, that's my habit. And kind of noticing that it is gives me a chance to change it. What do I need to do to change that? Well, I'm going to do this other thing. And that's going to take work. It's going to take more calories, and my brain's going to fight that because it's not its usual routine. But I'm going to do it anyway, and then I'm going to do it the next day, I'm going to do it the next day, and then all of a sudden that is the new normal.
Right.
And journaling's that way, and all the things that we want to do are that way.
Yeah.
If you're not, if there's something, but the answer isn't the diet. The answer is not the crash course or trying to, people will go out and they'll buy themselves an expensive gym membership. They will get all this gear, get the exercycle and put it in their house, thinking that that's going to motivate them to do it. And then that fails. It was not that, those weren't goals that were really realistically linked with who they are and where they were.
Right.
So I think of just what is the next thing that I need to do, and it's okay to push myself. I like to push myself outside of my comfort zone. Mm-hmm. So if I'm just lounging in my comfort zone, my brain's not going to be changing. I'm not going to be growing.
Yeah.
So that recognizing the work and the struggle as not a negative feeling, but realizing if I do this, I'm going to change fundamentally who I am.
Yeah.
And how I act in the world. And I have control over that. And whether that's with my exercise or my diet or my journaling or how often I go out in nature or how often I bring my children into nature. So don't want to kind of beat myself up for what I didn't do last time.
Right. And you mentioned a good thing of giving yourself permission to do these things or to be who you are at that moment. Yeah, be who you are.
Yeah. And so you fall down, you get back up.
Yeah.
If you go into our bathroom, we've got scrawled on the mirror these little sayings for our two little daughters. So my little 5-year-old Carolyn, you ask her, what do you do when you fall down? She'll say in her little 5-year-old voice, she'll say, you get back up. You get back up. And the same thing is let's say you get off your diet, you haven't journaled, you bought a bunch of art supplies and then you haven't done it. You're going to don't feel terrible about yourself, but just do a little thing today.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Exactly.
Well, you just have and that will help you do it tomorrow. You can't change what you didn't do yesterday, but knowing that each time you do that, you are building patterns that will make it easier for you to do it the time after that.
Yep. So it's a habit, like if I don't do something creative every day, I get this little anxiousness or like I'm missing something. Mm-hmm. So that's when it's sticking and you need it, and I guess it drives me to want to continue. Yeah. So
and when you recognize things like that, and then you want to, where there are those habits that are working for you that are the healthy ones, then you realize, I'm going to let's bookmark that. That is working for me. That is good. That is healthy. I want to keep doing that. And then you can intentionally reinforce those habits that you want to keep.
Exactly.
And it makes their life better.
Yep. So I want to be mindful of your time today and your busyness, but you have a lot going on. How can people, I have just 2 more questions really. So how can people find you and find out more about you? And, I mentioned a couple of your books, and I just thought this is your opportunity to say what you have going on.
Sure.
Yeah.
I've got a sort of a nature journaling zealot and evangelist. Mm-hmm. So I've got a website called johnmuirlaws.com. And on that, I've got a whole bunch of free video tutorials and blog posts that I'm putting up, giving people journaling techniques and tips.
Yeah.
There is a previous version of that curriculum that's available as a download now that you can find from that website. But this 3rd edition, oh, doggy. You just wait for that.
I'm excited for that. So anybody could buy that book.
Anybody can buy the book
when it comes out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You don't have to be an educator. Okay.
No.
Okay.
So, and it's also, I think it'll be of broad interest to also people who just have their own personal practice, because a lot of those things, it really, if you're going to be teaching that to somebody else, you need to really articulate to yourself why you're doing what you're doing. And so it helps you think about those things. Mm-hmm. Also, if you're in the Bay Area, every month I teach 7 free nature journaling workshops at different locations all around the Bay Area. So up in Marin and San Francisco and Belmont and Cupertino,
Wow. Yeah, you're
and
all over.
Lafayette and Saratoga and Oakland.
Yeah, that's the workshop I attended. Those are great. You fit
Those
a
are
lot
fun.
in 90 minutes.
It's kind of like drinking through a fire hose. There's a lot of content.
It is, but you walk away like, yeah.
So I do those workshops so that then when we go out in the field, I also lead these monthly nature journaling field trips.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that.
The workshop is to put the tools in your toolkit, and then the field trip, let's go use it together. Mm-hmm. And journaling together with a community of people is so much fun.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, and it gets you outside and with people. So, well, great. So I will link your website and information on the show notes.
Oh, great.
If that's okay, then people can
Absolutely.
find you. Okay. And my last question I ask all my interviewees is basically, what gives you the most hope?
It gives me hope.
Yeah, about just our natural world and everything going on.
I would say two things. One is the resiliency of nature. Mm-hmm. So when you really kind of back up to a geologic timescale, nature's going to bat last.
Yeah.
And in our lifetime, we do incredible amounts of damage to the biodiversity of the earth. We're experiencing right now a major extinction event.
We are.
Caused by human beings. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. Mm-hmm. But in the end of the day, in terms of geologic time, nature is going to have another round of it.
Yeah. But
in the shorter term, so I'm not just sort of thinking like, in hundreds of thousands of years,
it'll take care of itself.
It'll take care of itself. The other thing that gives me hope is human beings and people's ability, when motivated by love, to really come together and do incredible things. Mm-hmm. And nature brings that out in us. So I think the more that we are exposed to nature, mm-hmm. it gives us the motivation to do what we need to do in important short-term struggles. I was just recently at the Goldman Environmental Awards, and great. I was watching these people from all over the world who realized that something needed to be done, and they did. And it took courage and it took bravery. And the potential for that is in me and in everyone. It's mm-hmm. in my children. It's on everybody that I pass on the street. The more that we respect and honor each other, I think the more we give each other the room to kind of find those better angels of our nature in ourselves.
Yeah.
And that capacity for fierce courage, motivated by love, to do right for the future, mm-hmm. is amazingly powerful and inspiring to me. And I look at that, I think that's my species. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. I just love us.
That's great to hear. That's good to end on, definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate it, Jack. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed this chance to talk with you. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to BeProvided Conservation Radio. Links and resources to today's topic are in our show notes on iTunes. We appreciate your dedication and interest in protecting our natural world for future generations. If you like what you heard, please get involved by volunteering, donating, and sharing these podcasts with your friends. It also helps us to inform more people if you take a minute to leave a rating or review on iTunes. Have a great day, and thank you for listening to BeProvided Conservation Radio.